Let's talk about leveraged buyouts, which is usually what we talk about when we talk about private equity. Leveraged buyouts are very simple. The private equity team pretty much buys the company using debt. So they borrow a large quantity of money and then they use it to buy a company and run it their own way. In a leveraged buyout, the company has to pay off the debt interest every month while transforming itself to create value and raise its valuation. It's that simple. But then we have all kinds of situations that result from this. For example, the company usually focuses on optimizing their operations because they have to spend less cash every month so that they can make the debt interest payments, and so on. We're going to take a look at how LBOs work in detail. Leveraged buyouts are some of the highest value and highest risk investments that a private equity firm can make. The firm usually borrows a large quantity of debt to finance the actual purchase of an existing company, and then they make the necessary strategic changes to create value in that company, making it a market leader, expanding its key market segments, or others. LBOs are extremely risky due to the debt borrowed. The company must be able to make its payments every month while transforming itself into its desired version. This is why companies under leveraged buyouts are ruthlessly optimized with the sale or extension of whole business units, business lines, and possibly massive layoffs to keep the company as lean as possible and generating strong cash flow to pay off debt while achieving its goal. Unsurprisingly, a good candidate for a leveraged buyout in the eyes of a private equity firm must have, first of all, strong and predictable cash flow. This is a must if you want to pay that interest on time. The company must generate cash every month and consistently. Then, leading and defensible market positions. This is because the private equity firm wants the company to already have an unfair advantage that they can explore to ruthlessly optimize it. And blocking possible competitors with barriers to entry is a part of that. It must have growth and efficiency enhancement opportunities. Or in less fancy words, it must have fat that can be trimmed. Bloated companies are perfect because the private equity firm can come in, get rid of everything that's not optimal, brutally optimize the margins, and leave with returns. It must have low capex requirements. This is again due to that. A company under a leveraged buyout needs to make its interest payments. While reducing operational expenditures is the quickest way to have strong cash flow every single month, you can also reduce the capital expenditures, investing in less materials, equipment, and others, which creates more money in the bank that can pay off debt. A strong asset base is another requirement. This is due to the sheer amount of debt that is borrowed. The higher the asset base of the company, the more debt and high quality that can be borrowed, because you have more assets as collateral. And finally, proven operators as the management team. This is for a simple reason. If you're going to take a multinational colossal company and aim to transform it in 4 to 5 years, make it grow in market share and dominate, all while having to pay debt, then you probably want to have someone at the helm that has done this before. Besides leveraged buyouts, you can also have LBOs or MBIs. So a leveraged buyout itself, or LBO, is when the private equity firm acquires the company using debt. An MBO is when the management team of the company does it themselves. Exactly the same mechanism, but the company is owned by the management team and the private equity firm. An MBI is when it's an external management team buying out another company. So the exact same situation, but the management team comes from the inside. So private equity firm, internal management team, external management team. But the mechanics of the deal and how the investment works are the same for all of these three. And in any of them, the bought-out company will have to focus on creating value within the next 4 to 5 years. This can vary naturally, and this means either becoming an industry leader, having more market share, or just being in much better shape than the company currently is. After having understood the company's current conditions, which usually involves a very complex LBO modeling mechanism with a pre-LBO model modeling the transaction structure, and then a post-LBO model and a final assessment of go or no go, then the private equity firm will develop a quote-unquote master plan or blueprint to turn the company around from its present state to a version of it with a lot more value down the road. This plan is usually focused on ruthless action, and it goes from top to bottom, from the pure strategy to the lowest level of operations. Private equity firms usually only accept an investment if the master plan that they create is enticing enough to be worth the effort. The master plan always assumes a necessary deep level of due diligence done beforehand on the company. Naturally, the private equity firm must truly understand how the company makes money, because otherwise they won't be able to optimize it. This can include, but is not limited to, by any means, analyzing things such as customers and derived demand of the company, their competitors, environmental analysis, such as political, regulatory, or other factors, and more. In fact, this due diligence serves to vet opportunities before a deal even happens. A private equity firm will only go in if they're sure that they can add value to the company in the first place. After this diligence is done, then the master plan is defined. This is merely a set of 4 to 5 key initiatives that will take the company to its full potential. I know this sounds aspirational in theory, it sounds very beautiful and promising, but it's ruthless in practice. Many times, it's about extinguishing business lines and units, selling off assets, and just keeping what generates the most value and doubling down on that. In short, it's an accelerated form of evolution. What's working is invested in, and what is not is immediately killed off. This plan is usually extremely comprehensive, drilling down from the highest levels of strategy to the lowest levels of operations on all fronts. This requires a high level of knowledge of similar companies and possibly the industry, which is the reason why many private equity partners are experienced operators in the first place. The best way to know how to turn around a billion-dollar company is to already have done it before. After having developed the master plan, the private equity-owned firm will find itself reshaped and restructured to make that plan happen. Usually, this reshaping comes down to 3 things, all of them intimately related. The first is restructuring business units and lines. The second is putting the right people in the right place. And the third is rethinking the vision and mission. Both restructuring the company, placing the right people, and rethinking vision and mission all start with deep due diligence. Because only by knowing what assets the company has, both in literal terms, but also in terms of people, can this plan be made in the first place. In more detail, in terms of restructuring, the goal is to align the company with its value creation vision for the future. What I mean is that, if in order for the company to dominate the market, it needs to divest, eliminate, or sell off departments, assets, or business lines, it will do it right away. If you're taking an exercise and nutrition company that can really dominate the nutrition segment, the first thing the private equity firm will do is to kill off the whole exercise segment with its products, internal departments, and so on, because it doesn't match the vision for the future. In terms of placing the right people in the right place, By knowing the talent that lies in the organization and how it can be leveraged, the company can create owners for specific initiatives that will be rewarded for results. In terms of rethinking vision and mission, it's all about what will make sense in the future. For example, if a company sells software and hardware but only excels at the former, maybe they need to liquidate the other portion of the business and redefine itself to be an excellent software company. And the mission and vision will need a change to align with that. It's another example. Shaping an organization, naturally, is not just a one-time effort. While the majority of the heavy lifting will be done at the beginning, and the management team plays a pivotal role in communicating the needed changes to the organization, it's important to monitor and keep an eye on the key metrics. In some cases, like we saw, these changes don't just affect the strategic and operational components of the company, but they actually change its core mission and strategy, the company's DNA. Companies can shift from being a nutrition company to being a wellness company, similar to the previous example, from being a general technology provider to being a pioneer in specific solutions, such as technological military applications or government solutions, and so on. And when this vision changes, the whole company must scramble to align with it. Considering that the company will need to pay off debt regularly as it continues its reshaping towards value creation, then the most important thing is to reduce operating capital. In short, it needs to minimize monthly costs as much as possible. In a debt situation, cash is oxygen, and it's precisely one of the key metrics that leveraged buyout companies track to make sure that they can survive at the end of the month. So the ruthless focus on efficiency is good for creating value as soon as possible, but it's also a way to cut the monthly costs as much as possible to be able to survive month after month until the company makes the master plan happen and completes its transition. So as you see, leveraged buyouts are a unique type of investment. The private equity firm borrows a large quantity of money, uses it to buy a company, and run it their own way. There is usually a blueprint for value creation to achieve the full potential of the company, and it must be obeyed ruthlessly. Besides, the company must make the debt payments every month, so optimizing the operational expenses, decreasing them as much as possible, is imperative. These usually have the highest valuations and the highest investment tickets, but they also result in the highest rewards.